Okay, so thank you very much for coming, everyone. So as I was just mentioning to Anna, we've had a bit of a break. We've had a bit of a hiatus while I've been off work for family reasons. But I'm really, really happy that we're back, and really glad that you could all make it. I'm going to just give a little bit of an update first, just on where we're at with NoCode Northeast and some of the other plans that we're doing around NoCode over the next little while. And then once I've given that, I'll hand over to Ian, who can tell you a bit about his work at ExcelPoint. So just bear with me while I share my screen. There we go. There's a few more people coming in. 1 second, sorry. Right. There we go. Some dramatic noises from my son, but there we go. All right, so just as it says, we're back. So we had a great couple of sessions in February and March. As I say, took 3 months off, and in that time, since coming back, I've been working a lot on what the plans for NoCode Northeast are. Anyone who's at those two events will know that we talked a lot about ideas. We've had some feedback on those ideas. We've spoken to a few different people and started to develop some more concrete plans. So NoCode Northeast is looking like this. So we've got 4 main areas, which I'll go into one by one. But there's the community aspect, which is NoCode Northeast. There's NoCode Launchpad, which is about developing interest in NoCode, so trying to find those people who may not know about NoCode or where to go for more information about it, at NoCode and LowCode, should I say. The NoCode Incubator, which will be working in collaboration with 100 Days of NoCode, but also developing our own curriculum, and also the NoCode Arcade, which I'll tell you a bit more about. It's about raising profile of NoCode in the Northeast. And the vision for all of this is basically to create and nurture a vibrant NoCode and LowCode community in the Northeast as part of an active part of the wider digital ecosystem. It's really about trying to bring NoCode and LowCode to the surface, and something that Ian's been advocating for 20 plus years, but for a lot of people it's quite new. So yeah, we're really keen to get to the ahead of the game in the Northeast and make sure we're taking advantage of the amazing opportunities that NoCode and LowCode bring. So just to go through those a little bit more detail. So in terms of meetups and the community side of things, we've got all of the next 6 NoCode Northeast sessions booked in already. So just to go through these quickly, we've got obviously ExcelPoint Showcase today with Ian. We've got next month is going to be a colleague of mine, Ben, and myself are going to go through some NoCode tools for startups, but it'll be a special one because we're going to collaborate with the Collide event that Software City do, whereby we're looking at trying to bring together people with a tech idea, a startup idea that they want to develop, and also the tech people who could actually potentially work with them to build it, to develop it, to explore it, hence the Collide name. So that's going to be a special one where there'll be also an opportunity for people to pitch their business ideas, as well as going through probably, I think we're going to try and hit 10 different no-code tools. One of the other things to say about next month is that we're based on feedback, we're going to do a bit of an overview of a bunch of different tools, and then get sort of votes on them to understand which ones people would most like to kind of deep dive into, in order to sort of set the tone for some of the future events. The following month, we've got a few people join us for NoCode in the VCSE sector. That'll be led by Tom Watson, who will be telling us about the work he's doing with some of his colleagues. And also, and then following that, we've got Nutshell, who are another local no-code provider, who will talk about their program, much like Ian today. Following that, we've got the chief executive of a newish no-code tool called WhaleSync, who will be talking about the state of no-code data syncing. So that should be a really interesting one in terms of syncing data across various different no-code systems. And then we're going to do a bit of a deep dive on Stacker and Airtable as tools that we've been using internally, but we're going to hopefully have the community lead at Stacker and someone from Airtable coming to talk to us on the January event. So we've got it all planned out for the next 6 months. There is flexibilities, there might be cancellations. So if you've got ideas for talks, let us know. You can add them on the website, which isn't updated yet with the new brand and what have you. But if you've got ideas for talks, we are always looking for people to get involved, and we'll be really happy to receive your ideas. That could be a talk you want to do or a talk you would like to see. NoCode Launchpad is really initially going to be a sort of website holding page, which would be primarily there to just signpost people who are looking to find out about NoCode, having never heard about it before, or know a little bit about it but want to know what's going on in the Northeast, but also in the wider community. So we'll be putting signposts on there to various different NoCode spaces and hopefully helping people to get started. That the Launchpad could develop in the future to be more event-based and to have opportunities for people to actually get an introduction to NoCode through events and other activities. The NoCode Incubator is primarily the first thing we're going to be working on is working in partnerships with 100 Days of NoCode, which I'll speak about in a second. We're also looking at NoCode schools and getting NoCode into classroom activities. And also working with the Software City Enterprise team to encourage startups to access the incubator in order to actually turn their ideas into MVPs. And we're looking at further partnerships in this space in terms of delivering boot camps to college students, looking at T-levels and various other. So this is all about developing the skills around NoCode and low-code in the region. The last bit is the NoCode Arcade, which is we're aiming to launch hopefully around January time. The event itself will probably be a little bit later in the year, next year. And this is the aim of this is to create a national conference that will be a real showcase for NoCode and LowCode. We'll be looking to showcase NoCode products. So having the Silicon Valley players, let's say, but as well as all our local providers and regional providers, having a showcase to be able to show people what tools they've got that they could be using to develop their products and services. But also having a showcase around apps that have been used using NoCode, and business owners, entrepreneurs, and internal teams who have developed particular tools that they want to show off to people, to show the power and the potential of NoCode and LowCode to other budding no-coders. We are looking for sponsorship from the major platforms, or not so major platforms, if resources allow, and we're also looking to seek funding in order to make that one happen. And we'll be working in partnership with Software City and most likely with Dynamo, who you may well know we've merged with recently. So I just wanted to flag the fact that our friend Max, who was very kindly joined us on our opening day, and we're working with on a few different things, has got his NoCode MVP program launching. It's a really great program with a really high positive feedback level from everyone who's been on it. It's an international program, so you get to meet people from all over the world, not just in the UK. And it really teaches you the fundamentals of NoCode, but takes you through a process which allows you to go from an idea effectively to an MVP online and ready to go. If you're interested in that, the URL is there, 100daysnocode.com//NoCode MVP. The cost is 750 quid, which for a few weeks course is I think very reasonable. And this cohort is starting on the 29th of August. So give that a go if you're really interested in learning more quickly about NoCode and LowCode. There is a free offering from 100 Days NoCode as well that you might want to check out, which is 30 minutes a day over 100 days, as the name suggests, that will help you do a similar onboarding with NoCode. And that's it from me. So my email address is there if anyone wants to contact me about any of that stuff. We're still open to ideas. It's just trying to create a bit of a framework about around what we're doing. And yeah, always happy to have a chat. But without further ado, what I'd like to do, I'll just stop sharing my screen. I'm going to hand you over to Ian Brown. I've had the very big pleasure and privilege of meeting Ian recently and spend a bit of time down his offices having a demo of his system and also speaking at the Dynamo conference, and really impressed and inspired by the work that he's been doing with ExcelPoint. So I will hand over to you, Ian, to take us on through the rest of the evening.
Just a quick question, Adam.
Yeah.
From seeing the events coming up and showcase,
yeah,
beside this speaking slot, are you expecting me to deliver demonstration as well? That's not a problem if you do, but my expectation was it was presentation and discussion rather than demonstration.
Yeah. That's fine. It's totally up to you, and I guess up to the audience, Ian. My guess would be that even if it's just a quick dive in to see the types of things that you've done, as I've seen some, then I think people would love to see what it looks like. But obviously, on the flip side, I'm sure a 40-minute tech demo isn't what people came for either. So so a good let's see once you've done your presentation if people want to have a quick look. But yeah.
No problem.
All right, I'll go on mute now and turn my camera off because I've got kids attacking me from all angles. So thanks very much, Ian.
I will share my screen. Hopefully people can see this presentation and we'll take it from there. So ExcelPoint, who are we first and foremost? We're a software development company based in County Durham. We started life in Leeds in Yorkshire and we relocated to County Durham when I took over the company, best part of 20 years ago. We as a business started life as a bespoke software development house. We went for projects, won them, built the systems, moved on to the next one, and so on and so forth, as bespoke development works. So I've been in software development for, well, I'm 58, so I guess I could say I've been in software development for 40 years because it's been my only career. This jokey start point is really to say been around the software industry for many years. And what that means is, and I'll just move our gallery. That's interesting. Let me move the gallery so it's as far out of the way as possible. So what that really means is software technology, as with many technologies, tends to go in waves and cycles. So if you've been around the block a long time, you understand where trends are going, where trends have come from, and what the underlying problems and challenges are. And technology improves over time, so you can tend to eradicate more and more of those problems. So we've been doing what we do now in terms of a no-code platform for 20 years as a business. And only relatively recently, I realized that many years ago, I was working with no-code platforms back in the 80s and 90s. And that brings me on to the history. That's a better place for it, but I can't. Let me just hide that all together. So back in the 80s, you had natural language-like processing. And they got labeled as fourth generation languages, or 4GLs. So this was the industry's first attempt to move away from requiring programmers to develop hundreds of thousands of lines of code and move towards what today would be called a citizen developer, i.e. somebody who doesn't have a programming background, doesn't have that knowledge and skill, but still be able to build systems and processes that deliver end business functionality using tools like these four listed here. I have personal experience of the top two because I work for the company McDonnell Douglas. They're now called Northgate Information Solutions. If anybody on the call, on the presentation, works in the public sector, you've probably heard of them. But System Builder is one I came across years ago with IBM, and Sperry had one called Mapper. And these were tools that at their time were leading edge and taken up to a fairly high degree, quite successful, but died out towards the late 90s, largely because of the proliferation of browser-based solutions. And certainly those technologies I've listed in the previous block, the yellow block, weren't browser-based. And the transition to browser-based was difficult for them, to say the least. In the 90s, other solutions came around. So rather than developers having to build websites, you got solutions like FrontPage and Dreamweaver and WordPress, and even code generators where you could draw boxes, draw lines, create logic, create solutions depending on what product you were using, and they might generate code that a developer could then delve into and knock it into shape and turn it into something more mature. So this life cycle continued because in the 2000s and onwards, website builders just exploded, and there are many and varied now in existence. And I think they were the lead-in to what is now no-code platforms. So 2010 plus, going up to where we are today, you've got many different platforms available. They vary in functionality, capabilities, and depth. And some are targeted at true citizens, i.e. An individual citizen working at home, producing a hobby project, for want of a better word, and others are focused on corporate business backends and so on. Some are charity-based, some are plug and play, where you will take modules of things and just say, well, I'll have that module and that module and that module and bolt them together. They all class as no-code or low-code platforms. And in recent years, I would say the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a lot of hype from the big analysts on these platforms. So here's a few quotes from the likes of Gartner and Forrester. And there are a lot of quotes around the industry that you can pull out where the big analysts are saying lots and lots of software applications in the future will be developed using no-code or low-code platforms. And there's a lot of why behind those analysts' comments. This slide I will go over very quickly. I'll talk a little about jargon. So RPA, robotic process automation. I've already mentioned earlier, citizen developer, APIs, open system interconnection, enterprise application building, ERP, MRP, MAP, you name it. The IT industry has a 3-letter acronym for just about everything. In reality, as a user of no-code platforms, you're not really interested in a lot of the jargon. It's sometimes not helpful, it can confuse. And really what you want to know is, does it work? What can you do with it? And what are the implications? So the analysts are predicting these things for a number of different reasons. IT departments the world over are struggling to keep up with technological advancement. They're largely in the role of fulfilling strategic objectives that come from board level and keeping the business as usual still working, keeping the wheels turning. But when a departmental initiative comes along, and if you work for large organizations, you might experience this, when you take it to IT, it might feel like it goes into a black hole. And that's because in reality, they've only got the resources to do the really strategic things and keep the business as usual going. And all of your in-between initiatives tend to take a lot more time than you would expect. And it's a resource shortage. So this slide is titled Skills Shortage. And the idea of no-code and low-code platforms, or one of the benefits, is to move the production of systems, software, workflows, products beyond the IT function, so that end users working in departments in businesses, heading up small businesses at startup scale, etc., can build their own systems if they want, and they don't need a technical person to do that for them. So being able to rapidly deliver solutions is a key benefit as well. Speed lets you proof of concept things, work out what's going to work, what isn't going to work, close off the dead ends quickly so that you're not pursuing an avenue or a strategy that's never going to work out for you. And also put an MVP in front of people and say, is this what you want? Is that how this will work, etc. Yeah. And employees, rather than the technical people, your average employee doing a job, they tend to be experts in their own business area. So if you talk to somebody in HR, they know all about HR. They wouldn't know how to build a business system that does HR, but they know about HR. The same would be true about anybody in logistics or stock control, finance, or many other areas of the business. But by putting no-code and low-code products in the hands of your average employees that understand those processes in the context of the business, that understand the challenges that the business is facing, and probably understand the bottlenecks and the inefficiencies, those employees can then add value back to the business by using tools to build solutions. So it's enabling a new landscape, a new capability that hasn't really been around for a very, very long time. No code and low code. Is there a difference? Yes, there is. I'll talk about that a little more, but the industry lumps no code and low code solutions together. No code platforms generally will allow you to build systems without writing a single line of code. Low code products will generally allow you to build systems highly automated with no coding to get to a mature state of system development, but still expect, or some aspects will require you to write code. And that's built into the approach of a low code product. Yeah, there is actually, even though we're a no code platform, there is actually one area of our product where you can write code. 99% of our customers don't use that, but it is available for one area of our product to delve into code itself. So why is there a difference between low code and no code? If you have code, you need technical people to modify it, maintain it, migrate it forwards when technologies change, etc., etc. So the fact that you're building code, you're building a behind-the-scenes technical debt into the business that has to be managed and maintained and funded throughout the life cycle of whatever you're using. So low code and no code, very, very similar, but there are subtle and important differences. So here, this is just expanding on that a little bit more. And just to further that third bullet point down, like the NHS, the NHS is free at the point of use. No code products have been built by development teams like ours, who've written hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lines of code to build a platform and a product that other end users can build systems with without the need to code. So my likening to the NHS there, at the point of use, you don't need any programming knowledge. You don't need to be a technical person, and you can start to use a platform without any, I wouldn't say without any training, maybe some very basic training that might take a day or two. Quite opposite to becoming a programmer. And the second off bottom bullet point, in the words of Elon Musk, building the machine that builds the machine is much tougher than building the machine itself. That's the challenge that no-code platforms have. As users pull, push, drag, and bend platforms into new ways of using them, that maybe the designers never envisaged that, then development teams have to focus on those products much more, because they're building something once removed from the end solution itself. So that's a harder proposition to build. Yeah. And I think it's worth note that during the pandemic, I think there's no coincidence with the hype in the industry that no-code and low-code platforms did play a part. We did work for our customers that allowed them to pivot, to change their processes very rapidly in order to adapt to a changing world during the times of the pandemic. Benefits of no-code. This checkerboard says a lot of them. Faster time to market and time to fail, I've already mentioned. Removal of technical debt, removal or minimizing of technical debt. The agility aspect, agile and flexible, to some degree super agile, so the business can adapt to changing circumstances, whether it's regulations and legislation, internal pressures, best practices in the industry, and so on and so forth. Removing the reliance on IT can be a big one. Most good no-code platforms, low-code platforms, will allow the centralized IT function to still control the rollout of developments, but put the capability now in the hands of the end users. So the end users get what they want. They can be innovative and create solutions to business problems. IT can still control that from a corporate governance point of view. Oops, sorry, that was a scroll wheel error. My interpretation of the landscape in Noddy's pictures, there's a variety of no-code categories in my mind. So through the years, the late 90s through into the 2000s and beyond, you've got website builders. We talked about some of those earlier, the likes of Wix and Joomla, WordPress, and so on. And that's extended now into mobile app builders. So these are tools that do quite a fixed job, usually quite simple jobs. They do them very well, very quickly, and therefore what I might call a point solution. They do one single thing and do that quite well. The other side of the bottom row, middleware, you've got tools that will interpret a myriad of APIs, exchange data, move data around between systems, and help businesses with disparate systems to join those together in meaningful workflows. And then on the top left, we've got super spreadsheets, as I've termed them. And I think the best example of this is Monday.com. So Monday will allow all sorts of capabilities to be leveraged. And it's very much in a style of a spreadsheet, in the way that they will create their processes and functionality and allow people to configure that. And then the top right, you've got enterprise application builders, and that's where you've got products that will build full-blown systems at scale. And all of these different categories, as well as the fact that in each category there are multiple products and technologies available, all of those categories have a perfectly valid and good space to operate in. We fit in the enterprise application building category. You would never build an externally facing website as a showcase website in our tool. Technically, as a browser-based web app, we are a website. But when I say website in this context, I mean your corporate website, your company website that's showcasing the business. And you would never build that in our product. It's just not what we're designed for. And although we can do a bit of the middleware, exchanging data backwards and forwards, if you were in an environment where you had a myriad of systems and needed APIs to be very flexible to talk to each other, it might not be our product you'd use to do that either. And we're definitely not a spreadsheet related product. So they have pigeonholes, for want of a better word, where we can put products just to help people understand where they fit in the landscape, because there's a lot of that. And here you can see, and we've just listed some of the well-known ones and our, oops, go back. Some of the well-known ones and ourselves. We're not so well-known. Ironically, we've got a lot of customers. We've got about 230 customers now. And out of the 230 customers, we've got quite a lot of big names, global players who are doing a lot with our product. But we're still a small Northeast-based business, relatively unknown on the global landscape. And we've got a fraction of the available platforms on this slide, mostly the better known ones. But that just shows you the choices, capabilities, and some of the confusing aspects that end users have to grapple with. What are the risks and rewards of a no-code platform? Well, there are many benefits, and we've touched on them. Ease of use, agility, speed, time to market, leveraging citizen developers, eradicating technical debt, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of tangible benefits, but portability of platform may also be one. So being able to move through technological waves as time moves on and not having to redevelop your system could be a significant one. Intellectual property, you're building some intellectual property in another platform, in something else that you can leverage and you can sell. Ease of adoption is really all about how easy is it to start using a system that's been built in a no-code platform. Can you just log on to it, and is it intuitive, and can you follow it through? Yeah, it's not suitable for everything. I sometimes get asked, will this be the demise of programmers? And it absolutely, definitely will not be the demise of programmers. I like to think that programmers will be deployed to do the more difficult, more challenging, the real complex end of software development, and no-code platforms fit in that end. Where their skills can be really embraced and leveraged, rather than doing the mundane every day of the week. So one of the other things I hear quite a lot, and I hear it from right throughout the industry, even prospects, we're talking to a business at the moment who've used another no-code platform, and they have a view that you can only do simple things with a no-code platform. So we've shown them the type of things we typically turn out, and this is just to cover simple versus complex. So I've got here a few corporate examples. I'm not going to read them all out, but if anybody wants to ask questions, feel free. But we're going from large corporates looking at wide rollouts of mission critical aspects of their business in a no-code platform. Some of these UK wide, some of them globally. And that doesn't come without complexity. So the way people use systems in a global environment is challenging, to say the least. And if you can sit and live in that environment and do those complex workflows, processes, integration with other systems, etc., without coding, you're not in a simple world. I'm also conscious that a lot of the people on the call may be from smaller businesses. So here's a few examples of SMEs with their sizes and where they're based and what they do. And they do very different things. So the Encore Group in Washington, they use our product for quality control on the shop floor. Aura Infection Control, top left, they use it for the middleman function of selling products to end customers, purchasing from retail suppliers, warehousing, and pick, pack, distribute processes, and everything in between, from recruitment to the smallest one there, Compliant FM. They do ISO auditing and accreditations, and they use our product behind the scenes to make themselves more consistent, more efficient, and simpler to deliver their quality of service to their end customers with only 2 employees. I think they've grown a little bit now since this slide was put up, but still a very small, a micro business. So that was presentation. Does anybody have any questions around what I've talked about, had to say, disbelief challenges, or anything else for that matter? Let me pull this gallery back.
No questions, but I am actually impressed that I didn't realize that LowCode is starting from Joomla and WordPress, and just now having developed so far.
Well, I'm not saying that low-code and no-code platforms as they are today have their code base set in those.
Of course not.
Of course, but their heritage has grown from a number of decades as to how can you do these things in a cheaper, better, faster, quality, etc. way than writing hundreds of thousands of lines of code. And that's not said in those ways to be sort of in any way challenging. They're really just facts that there are millions of ways of tackling the same problem. Yeah. Would anybody like to see examples of what we do, or see me build something real time, or at this level, is this as much as you wanted to take away?
I'd like to see you build something, Ian, if you have time.
Yep.
Yeah, ditto. I'd love to see that too.
Yeah, I have no problem. We do a very standard demo of building from scratch a small CRM system. Let me get out of this PowerPoint presentation, jump into our browser. Please don't think of us as a CRM product. This demonstration is really just to show capabilities more than anything. So let's go to our demo platform. And let's get rid of that again. So what might be relevant, and ask questions as we go if you want. I'll say some things that are technical, but I'll try and keep any techno babble out of the conversation to some degree. I'm going to log on to this demo server. And here I'm using Google Chrome. We're using a small Microsoft Azure server in the cloud. We're using Microsoft SQL as the backend database. And we're using here forms-based authentication, i.e. a username and password. And on this one, we've got a captcha, which personally I hate, but it's just on there as for a demo purpose more than anything. So let's, oh, that's not a living room. It could be any browser. We've even run it on PlayStation. It could be any hosting platform, AWS, UK Cloud, Microsoft Azure, or anything else. We're agnostic when it comes to those things. We're not a product that is hosted in the cloud as a SaaS offering and you're multi-tenanted with other people. Generally speaking, our customers are all individual instances for their own personal use or for their own business use, if I can put it that way. I'm going to switch into a sandpit area of the demo where we build stuff, for want of a better phrase. We've broken this down. So I'm logged on as an administrator. So I've got the admin options. These are default menu options across the top. And if I wasn't admin, the admin user admin options would just disappear. And we break this down into these areas. Information groups is almost a nothing. So information types, for the technical people, information entities. But if you want to think of an employee as an information type, or an invoice as an information type, or an inquiry as an information type, they're all perfectly valid. Saved searches, which will suffice inquiries, pulling up recent work, reports, charts, graphs, etc. And we can collect those together onto a dashboard so that you can see multiple things at once graphically. And processes. So I ignored information groups, and you'll see why as we go through this. They're a tiny aspect of the system that's hardly ever used. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new system from scratch, and I'm going to call this, let's create a contact. I'm going to put it in a new group, and I'll just call this, I don't even know actually if we've got, let me see if we've got a NoCode Northeast. See, there's loads and loads of just stuff on here. No, we don't. So let's put this in NoCode Northeast and start creating what it is we want to support our contact. So we probably want a unique ID of some sort. And I'm aware that I might make some typos. In my home office, I have a Microsoft curved keyboard. And since I haven't been working in my home office for a long time, I'm not used to my curved keyboard anymore. We might want to know who this was added by. We might want to know the date they added it to the system. We might want to know the name of our contact. And here, by the way, all I'm doing is I am selecting one of these field types, and I'm just tabbing and hitting the first letter and selecting the field type. So when you see me jumping across, let's have a job title. Let's have who they work for. Oops. Oh man. We'll have an address. I won't do this the way I would typically be doing it. So for instance, I might, with a name, we might break that down into first name, middle initial, surname, and so on. With address, we would probably have 5 structured lines of address. Here, I'm just making it a notes field. We'll have some contact methods. So we'll have a telephone number. We'll have a mobile number and an email address. And if we were recording information about our contacts, that's probably what we want. Who are they? What's their job title? Who do they work for? Where are they based? And how do we get in touch with them? Yeah. So I'm making those fields or attributes up as we go along. When I click save, the system's created the structure for us supported in the backend database. Yeah. Every single one of these fields that we've just created has a lot of options available. I am not going to go through all the options. Notice the size of this scroll bar. So every field has a whole variety of options that can be used. And all of the options are generally turning something on or off, like so, selecting something from a list, nothing in that particular list, like so, or a field where you can type something in, manually. Typically, where you type something in manually, it might be an expression or a formula, or this field multiplied by that field plus VAT equals the total, that sort of thing. So that's what all of the field options are like. They're either selected from a drop down, just tick a box that does something. And for each of those field options, we have shortcuts. So I'm not going to go in and out of every field option doing everything. A bit like, if you're familiar with Microsoft Office, you'll understand that the main menu options have Alt symbolic letters like Alt F for file, Alt S for save, Alt P for print, etc. And we do a similar thing, but we just put them at the beginning of the field name. So shortcut, that means don't show this field on the add and the edit screen. It just unticks 2 checkboxes behind the scenes. That's all that does. And in curly brackets, we can put a default value. So I'm going to give this a C prefix and a serial number. Similarly, on the added by, I'm not going to show that on the add and the edit screen. I'm going to give it a default value of the current signed in user. And with date, current date. So the first 3 fields, the user isn't going to fill in. Asterisk is a shortcut for mandatory. picked just because most websites, most web tools in the market mark fields as mandatory with an asterisk. The chevron is saying keep this field with the field beside it. So keep this field beside name. So I'm going to make telephone number mandatory, and I'll put mobile number beside name, and I'll save that. And behind the scenes, it's ticked a few boxes and set a few options. That's all that's done for us. As an end user now, so if I do that in a new tab, what we've created is this form. This form is fully responsive. What do I mean by that? It will adapt to screen size and layout. Let's see if I can get hold of somewhere a bit better. Let's just, oops, wrong tab. Move that up a bit, get hold of the bottom corner. So as we move the screen, you'll see that the form is adapting to size. So anybody that's non-technical, that's called responsive design. If we become smaller still, you'll see that that recent activity has moved out of the way so that we can still fit that form on the screen. And as we get smaller still, we've jumped into a tablet or mobile phone style view of the same screen. So if I was on my mobile phone, we'd now have a mobile style menu, and it would be straight down the screen looking like this. Yeah. So we've done 1 minute's work so far. So let's just put somebody into here. Let's make me NoCode Guru. Works for ExcelPoint Limited. Yellow fields are mandatory. White fields are purely optional. Each screen section that we've created, we can collapse and expand by clicking the title bar. We can make fields and screen sections appear, disappear, become mandatory, become grayed out really easily. And I'll do that in a moment. And I'll put a telephone number in there. And I won't bother filling the rest of this screen in. I'll put an email address in actually, just to show you one aspect. And save that. So we've got our first data item. Looks a bit squashed up at the top. I think I'll tidy that up a bit. You might notice that we've rendered the email address as a link, which will start an email to that person. And we've rendered the telephone number as a tel link, so you can start a telephone call to that person. Telephone number's not as useful here on your desktop, although it would probably start a Skype call for me. But if I was on my mobile phone, I could touch that and start a call with that person. The tidying up of the top of the screen that I'm going to do. If I go back to our contact, I might just put, I've got a shortcut for put a blank line before this field. And again, all that's done is tick a box in the options. That's put a blank line in, spaced it out slightly more evenly. If we wanted, we can lay the whole screen out differently. So we might want to say, well, actually, we don't need as much space for name, but we need some more space for job title. And let's get the contact methods before we get the address, and so on. Yeah, and we might say, well, let's move email above telephone number and just move the whole screen around, lay it out how we want to line things up and so on. Yeah, we do a reasonably good job of laying the screen out in terms of responsive design straight out of the box without you having to think much about it, but you can tailor that. So we've got a basic form there. I'm going to add something else to it. So I'm going to put a checkbox field in. I'm going to move that up here, and I think I'll put a shortcut to say, keep this field on the same line as the works for. And just to show you there's no smoke and mirrors going on here, if I jump into that VIP checkbox field, go down to the display options, whoops, a bit too far, go to the display options, you'll see here, we've ticked a box that says keep on the same line as previous field. That's all that's doing. Yeah. But we've now, when we go to add another contact, we now have a VIP checkbox. By the way, you'll see this field's turned red. We've got a warning at the bottom. We can't save this at the moment. We've passed the name field and we haven't filled it in, and it's mandatory. So it's validated on the fly that we've got a problem. We've got an error straight away. Yeah. But I'm going to come back in here and make the contact methods hidden if VIP is not checked. So I'm going to use a shortcut again. And I'm going to, this is a hide this field if field 14 is empty. Notice that the VIP is field 14. So that shortcut will do something for us behind the scenes. And I will jump into that and show you what it's done. So on the contact methods, it's created this hidden condition where empty VIP. And if we look at that, all it is a filter. And we could add more things to this. So we might say, well, where VIP is empty, job title contains the word guru, and the status of this thing has reached a particular point or something like that. So although this is a very simple example of a checkbox checked or not, we can build quite complex logic to control how the screen behaves dynamically, but it's just done through the definition of a filter, which most users understand these days. So if I go back here now and refresh this screen, now we've got no contact methods at the bottom of the form. But as we start to fill this in, so we'll put Adam Hill in, let's make Adam NoCode specialist, works for SSC, and Adam's a VIP. We've met that logic. The other fields show or hide. And that same technique is used to make fields mandatory, prevent change, disabled, taken off the screen altogether, and a number of other things that you can apply conditions to. So quite complex conditions, quite complex dynamic screens can be created, but through very easy to understand techniques. So let's I'll just give the same number. Save that. So we've got Adam. When we created our contact, by the way, we automatically had plenty of search capabilities. So this is generic. I can come along and search for contacts, and I can mix and match the fields that belong to contacts. I might want to say where the job title contains guru and the person works for a particular company, and maybe they are a VIP, and so on. And then hit search and get some results. I'll just knock that off, and I've got a typo in there anyway. So I'll just search for nothing. Haven't shown any fields on the search results. Let me jump back here a second and just say fields I want to show on the search results. So the shortcut is R. Let's have their name, their job title, who they work for. We'll have their, I won't bother with their address actually. We'll have their contact methods, telephone number, mobile, and email, and save that. Go back here, refresh. Now we've got some data. Yeah, and we'll look at something else in a second. But just generically, we can say, the end user can say, actually, I'm not interested in the job title and the email address. I just want telephone numbers, take them off the screen. We can filter this further. So we might have, I've only got 2 results here, but we might have thousands of results. And I might want to say, actually, now that I can look at that data, I'm only interested in people who work for ExcelPoint, and so on. So all of that came with our 1 minute's work of setting up contact. What I'm going to do now, for anybody that's in the audience that's technical, we can set up connections. So these are all named instances of databases. They're probably all sitting in SQL Server in our case, that belong to our product in the section internal. Below that, we've got external. And below that, we've got plugins that implement API to API plugin capability. all of those areas are just providing data to the system. And on this system, if any of you have come across, we've got a link to Microsoft's demonstration database called Northwind. So I'm going to create company. Oops. And I'll put it in the NoCode Northeast group. But this time, I'm not going to define the fields. So I'm going to use a connection that we've created. And I specifically didn't spend a lot of time on those connections because there might be sensitive things in there. There might not as well. It is just a demo box. But here is a connection to Northwind. We authenticate against that. We can't just drill into data that exists in your world without appropriate permissions and governance wrapped around that. We're allowed to see tables. These are the tables that we're allowed to see. I'll pick customers. This is the customer table in the Northwind database. And if that had come from a flat file system, an Excel spreadsheet, maybe some old technology, CI/SAM, DB2, something like that, or if it had come from an API connection to something that exists outside of your world, like Company's House, Zero Accounts, Eventbrite that we're using at the moment for this session, this meeting, you'd go through the same process and you could create an information type based on an external source of data. I'm going to put a few spaces in here just to tidy them up because we use field names for on-screen prompts for the end user. We can totally change that if we want. We won't break anything. So it's only affecting the definition of it in our product. And I think I'll also, while I do this, put some things on the search results screen. So I'll use that. I'm not bothered about the address. I will have the city, the region. I won't bother with the zip code. I'll have the country and the phone and save that. So we've just created new information type. It exists in another data repository that you have access to and you've got the appropriate privileges. As an end user, we can now come along and search companies. We can still mix and match anything to do with company. I'll hit search and we've got data. Clearly, a lot of this is garbage, as you can see straight away by looking at it. But we've got data and we can page through that data. We can filter it further. We can do other things, anything we want with this data now. We might want to open a record, do some amendment, file it away again. We've got read-write access, subject to external permissions, to external data sources. What I might also want to do is I'll sort this by country. Got a load of blanks at the top, garbage data we've added. Now that it's sorted by something, I might want to summarize it. So we can now see that we've got, 3 companies in Italy and 11 in Germany. If I click Germany, these are the 11. So I can drill through and have a look at those and maybe deal with one of them. These might be my outstanding jobs. And because we've got this now summarized, we can also chart it using this little chart icon. And that shows us what we've got where visually. And we might not like that type of chart. We might prefer something like this. All of our charts and diagrams are interactive, so we can drill straight through. So if I go to that segment and click on there, these are the 13 in the USA. So we can start from an inquiry, tabular data, interesting things, filter it further down, turn it into a chart, or start from a chart and go back to the tabular data that supports that chart. I'm going to build a bit of process automation now. So let's, on our contact, add a new process. Didn't click it. Let's just go demo process. We can decide when this process bursts into life. That's this top section. Is it event driven? And here's a lot of checkboxes that are events that happen in our product all the time. This is happening on contact. So if we add a contact, make this process burst into life. if we edit a contact or open a contact and view it, make this process burst into life. Yeah. So that's event-driven processes. We can say it's user performed. We get a different set of prompts as to whether we want to prompt the user or give messages or whatever. Is it conditional? So in order for the user to be able to do this, they first have to meet some condition. And it can be scheduled. And a schedule would just be a timetable. So this might run every night at midnight. It might be the first working day of the month. It might be once every 5 minutes. So this process will wake up according to a timetable. I'm going to say this process happens on add and edit. They're the easiest ones to envisage from a demonstration point of view. And then here, these activity blocks are the building blocks of our processes. This is as near as it gets to writing code. And I'll just expand these out mainly to show that there are a lot of activity blocks with a lot of different capabilities. Most of them are pretty straightforward. So test an item, test the contents of the data, update an item, delete an item, check a previous value of some data value. Most of these things are pretty self-explanatory. Run some other process. And the way to use these is you drag the building block into the central section. And then when you click on that, there are some properties of this process. Let me just move that out of the way. There's some properties of this process. So we can say, let's test our contact to see if job title contains guru, for example. Typically, you might be testing monetary values or a status in the life cycle of information, checkboxes, things like that, because they're the things that will control your logic and your flow through your system. Yeah. So we'll say if you're a guru, I'll drop this on there. It's nested underneath. If I pull that out, you'll see this is not nested. This is nested underneath. And here I'm going to say, if the above logic was true, let's update something on our contact. Yeah. Does anybody have a mobile phone with them and are happy to share their mobile phone number? Shout out if you are.
I can do that.
Go on.
Privacy and all that. I can put my number on.
Go on, Adam. I can do mine. I'll do mine, actually.
I just shared my number with everyone for no reason.
Oh, okay. I wasn't being as sensitive about the privacy issues, but then I've realized you're recording this as well. Yeah. So I'm updating a single field here with a mobile phone number, but I could just as easily update, another field and another field and another field and put other values in all at the same time. Here we're not doing that. I'm just doing something very simple, updating one field. With this could be a calculation, could be a status change, could be aggregating data together. Quite often you might link to some other system and pull two fields into one in a system that you're building, or split fields up and so on. And then I think I'll lock the item. So I'll nest that under there. I'm going to do a set importance. Let's pull that into there. Let's come out of that. Let's do a send text message. Might be worth noting here that we can send emails, send push notifications to the mobile app, send text messages, send messages to webhooks, not solely used for, but quite often used for communicating with messaging platforms, instant messaging platforms like Teams and Slack and things like that. We can create appointments all into the notification section. So let me just nest a couple of these things. So let's say we'll set the importance to hi. We'll send a text message to, and I'll just have a look at our contact. Mobile is field 12. So I'm going to say, send a message to field 12 from ExcelPoint to say, hello, field 4, welcome to ExcelPoint. Your customer reference is field 1. Something like that. And then I think the last thing I'll do, I'll drop another update on here. And all of these previous activity blocks were happening on the current item, i.e. our contact. But this current item, oh, I realize I've skipped a little bit of the demo. So I will, and it'll help if I don't put an empty one on the end. Let's take that off. And just go back to what I meant to do. When I created company as well, I meant to go back to our contact and in the works for, put a cross-reference to, if I jump all the way down to NoCode Northeast. Oops, there it is. A cross-reference back to the company that's sitting in the Northwind database using the customer ID. So we're maintaining good referential integrity here. We're using the same IDs between systems. We'll sort that by company name, and company name is the second field, and I'll put field 2 in extra information. I'm going to tick provider tab and create a lookup list. Lookup list, this option is merely going to populate this next area of the screen down below with the same definition. It's quite common. So we'll save that. And if I go back to find a contact, just pull up Adam's record, for instance. If we edit this, you'll see Adam works for SSC. I put that in when this was free text, but we've now got a drop-down list of companies that have come from the Northwind database. So if I select one of those and save that, now you can see we've got a tab and we can look at the company that Adam works for and go back to the contact. So we can have a whole string of tabs that might be allowing users to navigate around related information that's in our system, or might be allowing them to navigate an information landscape that's quite complex across multiple systems, and the end user doesn't even realize they're doing that, doesn't have to log off one system and into another system. And that was the bit I'd forgotten to do. And the reason I realized I'd forgotten to do that is when I came to do that process. So let's just go back to that. Our demo process. I dropped another update on here and then didn't fill it in. And what I wanted to point out was all of these other activity blocks happen on the current item, our contact, but we have a relationship to somewhere else on the works for field. And these are now the fields of that somewhere else, the Northwind database. And let's set the contact name on the Northwind database to field 4 from our contact record. Save that. This process happens on add and edit. So if I edit Adam's record, I'll do this in the negative first, i.e. it won't fire this process. So I'll just save that and we should see no difference whatsoever. But if I edit this time and make Adam not a no-code specialist, but a no-code guru, save that. That process burst into life both times. The simple logic that we have that said, are you a guru? It's populated the mobile phone number field with my mobile phone. If you could hear that beep, that's me receiving a text message. It's raised this little red flag, top left. It's not really meant for this screen. And it updated the Northwind database with Adam Hill's name because he's now our contact there. So that process burst into life, happened and gave us the results we expected. The red, if we go back to a list, any list of data, the importance indicator will color code the left-hand column. Very often used for red, amber, green type scenarios, but can use any color, any shade, set it to what you want. And it's really just to draw attention to things that might be going out of SLA, overpriced, sold under margin, etc., etc. Yeah. So this is how we build systems. We've got full integration with Google Maps, Bing Maps, OpenStreetMap, and Here Maps. So you can do push pins, routes, and areas via mapping technologies. We can capture signatures, barcodes, QR codes, RFID tags. We can output a mobile app. I probably have got a menu. So I've got a menu and it's got add a new contact on there. Let me edit this menu and say add a menu option, add NoCode. Oops, wasn't even watching the screen there. Add a NoCode. What am I doing? I'm too busy looking at this curved keyboard. Add a NoCode Northeast contact. It's an add item as opposed to a search or a dashboard or go to some URL or a submenu option. So it's an add item of type, and there'll be hundreds of these. Contact. Hundreds, which is very unusual. It's only because we do this sort of demonstration many times. We can change the color of things if we want on the menu system, and we'll save that. And we've got a new add new coder Northeast contact, takes us straight to our screen. But the very fact that the checkbox on the menu definition was set to available on mobile, which you might have noticed, this tick box, that is creating a standalone native mobile app for Android, iOS, and Windows to support this menu option. So we could go to our mobile app and fill in this screen to add a new contact. And that could be done entirely offline, working locally on the mobile device for as long as you want. Synchronize it with the main system later. Process automation would fire into life when it's synchronized with the main system. There is an option to make the process automation happen on the mobile device as well, if you want it to work that way around. So this is how we build systems. And to a large degree, whether the system is a large and complex system or a small system, for a startup organization, the processes, the capabilities, it's all done in the same way. We've probably got one sitting in the background here. This will have timed out long ago, a system that we're building for a large German engineering company at the moment. So in terms of getting to the bottom of how we build systems, happy to answer questions, happy to explore more. How would you do this, that, and the other? But just as an education piece, it's worth seeing that we didn't do any coding. We were really just picking options and built a small system in, don't know what we took there, about 40 minutes, something like that.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Ian. Does anyone have any questions for Ian about the presentation or the demo?
No, not really. It's just kind of impressive that you've got loads of connectors there. I think that was that's really useful feature in this. I'm thinking from the perspective, I moved from private sector to to public sector, and I can observe like 500 different systems.
Yeah.
And I'm just like looking into kind of what the future will bring in terms of bringing this information together, and having a system in the middle which will kind of communicate with other systems through different options, including SQL. It's kind of a powerful feature, I think.
Yeah, I think the ability to, what we've done is we've separated the data access layer from the business logic layer. So you can link to data that's in our system or someone else's system, flat files, virtually any data format to some degree. And all our system sees that is a data provider. So it will consume data and also update data where the technology allows. So obviously, some of that's outside of our product. Regardless of where it is, but apply the business logic to it that you've configured and created in the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I see the future of that, especially when you think that companies which are using loads of different systems and they don't want to ditch them completely, they want to use them to put the system which is smart enough to utilize the data behind it. It's absolutely crucial. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
A good example of that. We do a lot of work for a company called Hanson. You might be familiar with them if you go up and down the motorways. They're a big construction company. They're the biggest concrete provider across Europe. And they use our system for a variety of things. And there was one time, it was a short term, it lasted for 2 or 3 years. They were moving their main ERP system from, I think, JD Edwards to SAP, or the other way around. I think it was from JD Edwards to SAP. And they had an overlapping period of 2 or 3 years where they had both systems in place for a while.
Okay.
Some user departments had to update JD Edwards and update SAP for every single transaction they did.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So they realized that they could build front-end screens in our product very quickly and very easily that do nothing but capture the data to the lowest common denominator. Clearly, if one of those products could only take, say, a description up to 30 characters and the other one could take 50 characters, we would only allow 30. They'd put the data in once and we would write it into both JD Edwards and SAP. And therefore, all the end user departments could just do their transactions once.
Yeah, absolutely.
Short-term solution.
I can see in the public sector also the situation that you are forced to use some systems because they are, I don't know, governmental approved, or your partners are using them, and you just have to use this particular system, but it's not helping you with the other part of the business you are working. So yeah, absolutely, I can see many situations then that when people have to copy some cases from one system to another, and it is not about losing a client. It's sometimes not following up, just in difficult cases and losing people who are actually, looking for help or something.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely what I'm also looking forward to. Yeah.
So implementing a business process or a business system, I just talked about that in the context of CRM. We support a number of charities as well as our customers. And there's a Northeast charity that some of you might have come across called If You Care Share. And they deal with the aftermath of suicides and prevention of suicide through education and support. And they use our system extensively across the whole region. And they described to me their processes and said, these are mission critical business processes because there are gates in time, alerts that get fired out, and so on and so forth. And it really is as critical as if something goes wrong, somebody might die. In fact, somebody might take their own life. Wow. Because they're delivering support in key moments in time. Another aspect that we work with where it could be life-threatening is we do work for National Air Traffic Control, National Air Traffic Services. not in the context of keeping planes in the air, I hasten to add, but it is around air traffic controllers.
Any other thoughts or questions?
That was a very simple demonstration. We tend to do two types of demo. If there isn't a brief, so if a customer comes along and says, show us what your product can do, broad capabilities, just to get a flavor, we do that type of demonstration we've just done now. Or if a customer has a very specific challenge that they're trying to solve, we might say to them, give us some information in advance, tell us what you're trying to solve, give us some examples and so on. And we would gear the demonstration around their specific problem.
I loved the anecdote you told me, Ian, about where you were sat with a potential client or a client, and they were sort of describing things, and they thought you were taking notes or whatever, and then they sort of said, right, so does that make sense what we want? And you turned around and said, what, something like this, and actually demoed what demoed what it was.
I know the client you're talking about. It's a company called Copenhagen Investment Services. In the UK, they build two things. They build biomass power stations, and they're probably going to be the biggest battery storage people. And they wanted us to build them a mobile app that would allow them to capture quality problems of biomass being delivered to site. But that has its arms and legs and feelers right through the supply chain into who is the supplier, what does their contract say, what are the penalties for low quality product, etc., etc. And we sat a number of stakeholders around the room and had a hothouse session. They discussed things amongst themselves. They argued over issues. They even got their own processes wrong some of the times. We asked lots of questions, and we were building it like I just have on a big screen. And at the end of the session, as Adam said, the senior stakeholder banged the table and said, right, I think we've got it. If you can build us that, that's what we want. And we could look at him and say, build you what? This isn't PowerPoint. We've been building it. And they since have turned into a really good customer for us, self-sufficient, trained, do all their own work, and they're doing all sorts of things with the product.
Thanks, Ian. That's great. All right. Does anyone have any last questions before we wrap up? Cool. Well, thanks, Ian. That was, go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, happy to share my email address or phone number if anybody wants it. And in any case, you'll find ExcelPoint online. Great
stuff. No, that was great. Like Anna, I think one of the things that really jumped out at me when you gave me some of this demo previously as well was that the connectors. I think that's really exciting options, but the speed at which you can build things is phenomenal. So really great no-code demonstration. So I just wanted to say before we go, if I can shout over my children, we've got one. I'm going to put the link in the chat to the Sunderland IoT 5G accelerator that Software City are running at the moment. I've been asked by my colleague Mark to give it a plug, but it's quite interesting. There's for anyone who's interested in developing any technology over 5G or IoT, the accelerator is open. So the applications are open until the 15th of August. There's up to 10 grand for each of the people who get through the application, 2 days a week for 6 weeks from the week commencing the 12th September. It's an opportunity to use 5G in Sunderland City, the private network and tech support. The city tech support that's been sort of fairly widely covered in terms of the innovation that they're doing there. There's also access to potential partners, investors. They're open to ideas, prototypes, MVPs, and people who are already trading. So if anyone's interested in that, you can check out the website there. I think that'd be interesting for some. The next event will be going live, I hope, tomorrow. As I mentioned, it's a Collide collaboration, so we're working with our enterprise team looking at no-code tools that startups can use. To be frank with you, most of those no-code tools are tools that anyone can use, but we'll be specifically looking at bringing the tech no-code audience together with founders and startup people who are looking at setting up a business. Thank you very much, Ian, again, and thanks everyone for coming, and have a lovely evening and take care, and we'll see you hopefully next time, which is, one second, September the 6th. So put it in your diaries now, and I'll let you. I'll send around information to those on the mailing list and Twitter and what have you tomorrow.
I'm away, Adam, but we might send somebody else along. But
that would be great.
Never mind.
Get someone there, and hopefully that one will be in person venue to be finalised in the next few days. Thanks very much, everyone. Great to see you, and
no problem.
See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
All
See ya.
right.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.